Hi and welcome. I'm here with my good friend David Shipley Alexander, and this is video 31 in David's Infinite Energy video series. And David, where are we going today?
Yes, hello everybody. Today we are going all over the earth, and in particular to Greenland, Baffin Island, and Antarctica.
That sounds cold, especially now that summer is finally about to set in. And Antarctica, what is that about?
Well, stay tuned and you will find out. I have been studying what we call free energy for nearly 50 years. Today, what I want to convey to you is that we would have free energy available on this planet if it was not for a band of powerful people, who many believe are backed by non physical beings, who keep us in bondage, living in lack, so they can live off the misery energy generated because they control us and our finances. If we had free energy, we, all of us, would be living in freedom, and there would be no misery energy feeding the elites.
He was the wizard of 1,000 kings, and I chanced to meet him one night, wandering. He told me tales, and he drank my wine. Me and my magic man kind of feeling fine.
All right, David, this sounds exciting. I'm looking forward to this. Please take it away.
Thank you, Bjorn. And yes, for a long time I have been studying, doing experiments, and communicating about free energy. In addition, starting more than 40 years ago, I have met and spoken with a number of prominent free energy inventors and experimenters. In 2016, I began to create and upload videos on this topic to YouTube. More recently, I have been co-creating videos on this topic with my friend Bjorn Trofton and uploading these to YouTube, BitChute, and Rumble. This is video 31 in the series. 43 years ago, it was a positive, life-changing event for me when I was leading an experiment team that made very accurate measurements of energy into and energy out of a simple energy converter. The energy out was 40% larger than the energy in. We carefully repeated that experiment and obtained the same result. By what is currently taught, that is not supposed to happen. The laboratory manager stated that I had obviously made a mistake, and he never did look at the experimental data. This was my direct exposure to the reality of free energy and its non-acceptance, even active suppression by members of the scientific community. So how do we reconcile this mismatch between the expected result and the actual measured result? Here's what I see. The following ideas came as a result of prayer. We live in a quantum field, and whoever holds the most cohesive thought and catalyzes that thought with strong emotion or desire, whoever backs that thought and that desire with an unbending will creates the reality that confines and boxes us in the consensus that forms around this powerful idea. This becomes the finite field of consensual reality, where limitation exists and is used to control. The present confinement field has an overarching idea that reinforces the finite system and belief of lack. The idea is that there is only so much energy and that it all exists in the various forms around and about us, and this is embodied in the conservation law and is propped up by the belief that nothing is faster than the speed of light. This all goes to the form of physics that evolved as a result of measurements based on our five perceptions, these being extended and yet still being directed by the five senses through various mechanical and technological devices that have allowed us to perceive or detect X-rays, gamma rays, etc. With the coming of quantum physics and quantum mechanics, we see what the old alchemists like Roger Bacon and even Isaac Newton saw, that we are surrounded by multiple dimensions that transcend all of the five senses, and that our present science fights to keep the old perceptions of its cutting-edge advancement, and yet in truth is in but its infancy. All of the so-called dark matter and dark energy that has been revealed and repressed in the last 30 years is just Bacon's and Newton's etheric field coming back under a revamped description and name. The etheric is but one dimension of the physical plane. There are multiple planes and dimensions beyond this. When we lose the finite confining of a science that has become a religion, those who seek to control us through lack will lose all power. Infinite energy destroys their control, for there is no lack, because in the end, as Bacon and Newton knew, that God was infinite and that God is energy. Freedom for mankind is found only in God, and anything that is finite is imprisoning. This includes the restriction of financial capital from inventors and builders, which is also often used to stop free energy. By this time, most people have heard about the great inventor, Nikola Tesla. Potentially, his most important invention would have been his high-voltage tower on Long Island, New York, designed to radiate electrical energy into the ionosphere planet-wide. Anyone on Earth using a simple power receiver would have access to free energy. Tesla had borrowed funds from the banker J.P. Morgan to construct his high-voltage tower, but it wasn't quite enough to finish the project. Therefore, Tesla went back to Morgan in the early 1900s to borrow enough additional funds to bring the tower to completion. When Morgan realized that he was financing a huge free energy project, he explained to Tesla that he, Morgan, was a businessman, that he never gave anything away for free, and that if people wanted electrical power, it must be carried by wires to their home or place of business and metered so they could be billed appropriately. Tesla did not receive any more funds from Morgan, and Morgan saw that no one else would lend money to Tesla, thereby ending the project. Consequently, from that time to the present, the people or corporations of this planet pay for their electricity. So far, we have looked at how the elites withhold free energy on the mental level by teaching conservation laws into what is taught in schools and colleges, saying it can happen, it's a law of nature, and on the physical level by withholding funding. So now, Why does the title of this presentation contain the word misery? Let's go deeper and find out. The world is controlled by misery. Free energy would reduce that misery to a completely manageable level. And because it would be manageable, we would be free to find its cause, its effect, and free ourselves from it mentally, emotionally, and physically. In the world of free energy, we will become free of the negative avoidance, motivation of misery, and the joy of discovery would replace it. Like a little child, the world would become a fascinating adventure again. Here we are given a unique perspective on information that is available if you go look for it. A collective dawning realization is freeing us, however quickly and however slowly, from the mind-forged manacles created by the elites and habitually and ritualistically imposed upon ourselves each day by ourselves under the threat of being differentiated, isolated, and rejected by the collective. We are imprisoning ourselves so that we might be able to belong with the rest of the prisoners. The greatest iron bars that confine us and keep us in misery are the unquestioned ideas we are fed each day. We have seen what happens to those who question these ideas, and we are now joining their ranks. The suppression of free energy technology has been intense, up to and including the killing of inventors. I remember my first meeting with Gene Malov, and what a wonderful individual he was. And for him to be killed, or someone as great as my old friend Tom Bearden to die as a frightened old man under their direct hand and manipulation? I say, as Archangel Michael did of old to Lucifer, who was ego baiting him into a personality fight that would have separated Michael from God had he taken the bait. I say with Michael, God help me. God rebuke you, Luciel, not me, but God rebuke you. And in this, I find my freedom for me to be who I need to be. For my soul, and for all souls who would decide to drink this communion cup with me, I lift the cup of freedom and say, the time of infinite energy is nigh. So, like Isaac Newton of old, yes, I am a scientist, but the constant in all of my equations is the same as his, the geometry of divinity, God, the great I am. Even though I and many others are convinced that free energy is real, the number of free energy devices which have penetrated the commercial marketplace is small. We ask why, and we go all the way back to my first video, which presents Dr. Peter Lindemann's reasons that we, the people, essentially do not have access to free energy now due to the reasons he presents. The fourth one of four being the majority of people have not yet developed sufficiently spiritually. Principles that we could call spiritual, or the absence of these, are a major factor determining whether free energy can come into widespread use on a planetary scale or not. So now, let's examine the details of this situation, including the effect of misery. We would describe most of the world's people as poor, and they would include adults and children who possess few things, have little to eat, and no means to stay warm in the winter. Such people are living in misery, and we would say they are radiating misery out into the world. We can also examine the transfer of misery energy on a local level from one person to another. In many cases, they will know each other. In some situations, an individual may even depend upon this transference. Then, the consumption of negative energy, such as misery, in order to maintain their existence. This has even been explained by a self-proclaimed narcissist calling himself H.G. Tudor in a book he wrote called Fuel. Here's the cover of the book he wrote. Statements about fuel in Tudor's book and other sources follow. Misery is a form of energy which can be radiated by people and can be the fuel for other people or non-physical beings. Narcissistic supply, according to Wikipedia, is defined as follows. In psychoanalytic theory, narcissistic supply is a pathological or excessive need for attention or admiration from codependents that does not take into account the feelings, opinions, or preferences of other people. Tudor prefers to call this fuel. Fallen ones prefer a negative fuel, such as misery, rather than a positive fuel, such as love. Tudor states that his sole purpose of doing something is to obtain fuel. In the introduction to his book, Tudor states that what he calls fuel is absolutely critical to narcissists like himself. On pages 6 and 7, Tudor says, it is absolutely essential. You need air to breathe. We need our fuel to exist and prosper. That's his quote. David Icke calls the process of obtaining fuel from other people looshing. That word derives from light.
David, that is real serious information and very important to know about, that this energy harvesting scheme is going on out there. I'm really grateful you included it in this video. I just want to insert here that when David Icke talks about this looshing, it is to warn us about this energy harvesting scheme going on out there. It is not an endorsement of this fuel harvesting, as you could say H.G. Tudor's is.
Yes, that's a very good point. And just like many commodities, this fuel has a supply chain. People at a certain position in the chain receive fuel from the next lower position in the chain, but must supply a stated amount of fuel to the next higher position in the chain. For the people on this planet, the supply chain goes up to the very few in number elites. The willfulness of these elites will never allow misery to go away. Anywhere there is an energy bottleneck, for example, where one finds people such as the judicial, politicians, and policemen, these people are taking out a portion of that flow of energy as their fuel. Elites are not required. Here is a teaching from Helena Roerich from the introduction of the book, The Secret World Government, which adds more to our understanding of fuel. So here's the cover of her book.
Very interesting book.
Very interesting book. She says, and this is in my words, the driving force involved in the need for some people to acquire fuel from other people is the needs of invisible entities, typically called demons, carried in people's auras. Even ordinary people are possessed by such demonic beings, which can cause the people to have an urge to kill other people or themselves. As there are forces of darkness causing misery, there are forces of light, such as heavenly beings sending helpful ideas to people on earth. Some people have been receiving ideas, sometimes in dreams, from above. enabling them to invent, then construct devices or machines which are clearly over unity, which means the measured output energy is greater than the measured input energy, sometimes by a significant amount. I personally know of two such examples involving advanced propulsion, a close brother, so to speak, to advanced energy. The first was about 25 years ago when I was collecting information for NASA on advanced energy and advanced propulsion concepts. An inventor told me that he had the same dream every night, over and over, for weeks, months, and many months. A picture of a wheel within a wheel. He finally built it and placed his propulsion device and a battery to power it in a sealed wooden box. No propeller or fan blades protruded from the box, in a canoe, which pushed that canoe carrying two men across a swimming pool. This can be seen in an internet video. See the link below. Furthermore, as a very personal example, less than a year ago, I prayed for inspiration from the Ascended Master, Saint Germain. I received an immediate picture in my mind, so I know this type of communication is real. Now, let's tie it all together. If free energy devices were allowed to be built in large numbers and then sold to the public at a fair price, the large number of poor people in the world would not be as poor, maybe not poor at all, and their lives would be significantly improved. Therefore, the amount of misery energy radiating into the world and into the astral plane would keep decreasing. Consequently, the elites who have cut themselves off from God's energy would have their fuel supply, misery energy, cut off or greatly reduced. For this reason, the elites and their minions, in order to keep existing and maintain their control of the world by maintaining the maximum flow of misery in the world, will prevent free energy devices or systems from being sold to the public in any significant quantity, ever. They indeed go to extreme measures to prevent this from happening, and we can see it. Imagine free energy greenhouses covering Greenland, Baffin Island, Antarctica.
Ah, there it is.
Yes, there is Antarctica. If we had infinite energy, we could heat them and light them, because with infinite energy we could be able to run desalination plants without the exorbitant costs. And imagine the great northern cities where, like the various sports stadiums, we were to build retractable roofs over important thoroughfares and heat them. This will be the end of death by exposure or starvation. Can you imagine you see palm trees down the streets of Paris?
Yeah.
Infinite energy is man's stepping stone to the stars.
Wow, David, that is beautiful. And that would also be our stepping stone out from this energy harvesting scheme, which you were describing just a little bit ago.
Yes. And in this presentation, we have attempted to show the effect of misery on a planetary scale and how the widespread prevention of the commercialization of over-unity free energy technology helps maintain Earth's planetary flow of misery energy, which some people, such as the elites, consume as their fuel. I believe that the reduction of planetary misery will be a result of, as well as a requirement for, Saint Germain's great incoming golden age. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, Bjorn.
All right. See you
Next
next video.